What's up, guys? Welcome back to AITA Chronicles, where Reddit drama gets real. And today, buckle in because this episode is a whole roller coaster of emotions, betrayals, and brutal truths. We're kicking things off with a wife asked to pay for her stepson's surgery after years of being treated like an outsider. Then we go straight into a daughter who finally tells her mom what she really thinks of the man she cheated on her dad with. And trust me, that moment hits like a punch. We've got weddings torn apart by petty revenge, husbands emotionally checking out of their marriages, girlfriends stirring the pot, and one guy just trying to figure out if he's allowed to sleep in his own bed or if it's already been taken over by his girlfriend's toddler. Every single story is a new layer of drama. Some will make you mad, others will have you yelling yes at your screen, and a few might even hit a little too close to home. Whether you're folding laundry, hiding from your in-laws, or just need a break from your own messy group chat, this is the episode you'll want to stick with. Because today's stories will have you asking, who TF thinks they're actually in the right? Oh, and hey, we're so close to hitting 10,000 subscribers, and every like, comment, and click brings us closer to that milestone. So don't forget to tap that bell, smash that like button, and hit subscribe if you haven't already. Now let's get into it. Am I the asshole for how I responded when my husband asked me to pay for my stepson's surgery? This story is about love, loyalty, and the limits of how much someone is expected to give, especially when that someone has been treated like an outsider from day one. So the writer, she's been with her husband for 5 years. That's half a decade. Not a short fling, not a maybe this'll work kind of thing. She's been in it. She's stood by him, supported him, and tried to make this family work. But let's talk about Ethan, her husband's son from a previous marriage. He moved in with them when he was 16. And from the very beginning, this wasn't some feel-good blended family Disney movie. No bonding, no soft, you're not my mom, but I respect you moments. Nah. Ethan came in with walls up, claws out, hostile. Distant, mean, the kind of teen who doesn't just dislike you, he lets you know it every single day. He made comments about the writer's age, her living situation, anything he could find. And yeah, teenagers can be rough, but this wasn't normal growing pains. This was targeted, cold, and constant. Still, the writer tried. She kept her heart open. And when her husband was struggling financially, she stepped up, offered to help pay for Ethan's college. Not because she wanted brownie points, not because she expected gratitude. She did it because she genuinely wanted to help, to be there, to bridge that gap. But her husband's response? You can't buy your way into being his mom. That sentence hit like a slap in the face. After everything she'd been through, trying to coexist with a kid who didn't want her around, offering financial support out of love and good intention, that's what she got? Like her kindness was manipulative. Like her help came with strings attached, like she was trying to buy affection instead of just trying to give it. So she backed off, completely. No pushing, no arguments. She respected their space, she let it be. Fast forward to now, Ethan is sick. He's been struggling for 4 months, taking medication that's no longer working. Now he needs surgery, and he goes to his dad for help. And guess what? Now, the husband comes to the writer. Asks her if she can contribute financially, not just because they're married and money is tight, but because maybe this could be the golden moment, the magical breakthrough, the fairy tale ending. This could be the chance to rebuild things, he says. And the writer, she just looks him in the eye and says, I won't buy my way into being his mom, can I? Boom. The same line he once threw in her face, she tossed it right back. Not out of spite, but out of principle. That door was shut years ago. She wasn't the one who slammed it, and now her husband's calling her cruel, petty? No, let's call it what it is, real. This woman gave and gave and gave. She was met with disrespect, rejection, gaslighting, and now she's supposed to swoop in like some hero to pour money into someone who never once gave her a fraction of kindness. No one's saying Ethan deserves to suffer, but this isn't just about money. It's about dignity. About not being used as an emotional ATM when it's convenient, about refusing to be everyone's plan B after being dismissed as irrelevant for years. And now the husband, The same man who once belittled her kindness has the audacity to say he's reconsidering the marriage after everything? Because she set a boundary? Because she finally chose herself? Nah, that's not love. That's manipulation. That's entitlement dressed up as moral outrage. So, am I the asshole? Let's be clear. No, the writer didn't ask for this situation. She didn't create the distance between her and Ethan. She tried. She showed up. She was willing. And when she was rejected, she walked away gracefully. And now, when the stakes are high, suddenly she's supposed to show up without an apology, without any acknowledgement of the years of disrespect. Just hand over her wallet like none of it happened? Not today. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is say no. Not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. And if that makes people uncomfortable, maybe they should sit with the choices they made that brought them there. So no, writer, you are not the asshole. You're just done being everyone else's doormat. Am I the asshole for not entertaining a girl who thinks I got her pregnant from fingering? All right, this one right here, this isn't just awkward. It's wild. It's the kind of story that makes you sit back, rub your temples, and think, how the hell did we even get here? So let's break this down. The writer, 21, goes out with this girl, 18. Now, right away, the age difference isn't huge. But when you're early 20s and dealing with someone freshly out of high school, sometimes those few years hit different, especially in terms of maturity, life experience, and, well, sex ed. Date 1. It's okay. Nothing too crazy. The vibes? Meh. Not terrible, but nothing that screams, we're about to be something real. The writer tries to wrap up the night with a kiss, and what does she say? I don't know how to kiss. Now pause. That moment right there, that's when the writer should have seen the flashing red lights. Not a deal breaker on its own, but when you're 21 and you realize someone's still learning the very basics of adult intimacy, maybe it's time to step back. But hey, the writer's human. He gives it one more try. Date 2, they hit the movies. Things get a little more heated. She offers to help him out during the movie. Let's not act shocked. This is Gen Z dating, where things go from popcorn to personal real fast. The writer finishes, cleans up, then returns the favor. It's mutual. Respectful. No sex, no full-blown encounter, just heavy hands-on exploration. You know the deal. After that, silence, no texting, no awkward "what are we?" convos. It seemed like both sides mutually understood that this thing wasn't really going anywhere. Case closed, or so he thought. Fast forward 3 weeks later. She hits him up in a panic, says her period is late, not by a day or two, 3 weeks. She's stressed, scared, sending him articles, yes, actual articles, about how pregnancy can happen from fingering if there's sperm on the hand. Now let's pause again. I mean, come on. We live in a world where information is everywhere, but somehow we still end up here with full-grown people convinced that sperm teleports through genes and survives 5 hours on a dry finger like it's Jason Bourne. The writer stays calm, doesn't mock her, doesn't blow up, just tells her the truth. There was no sperm on his hand. And even if there were, sperm doesn't survive like that. That's not how reproduction works. That's not how biology works. But instead of leaving it there, she spirals, starts blowing up his phone, text after text, panic, guilt-tripping, anxiety-fueled fear. It goes from a misunderstanding to a full-blown obsession. Now here's the kicker. The writer, he starts ignoring her. Not because he's evil, not because he's heartless, but because at some point you have to ask, what more can I possibly say? He's already reassured her, already gave her facts, already made it clear there was no risk, but she refuses to believe it. And now he's just the target of her panic. Some of the writer's friends think it's funny. Others say he's being too cold, that ignoring her while she's scared is kind of messed up. But let's zoom out for a second. This isn't just about pregnancy fears. This is about emotional responsibility, about where your support ends and where someone else's responsibility for their own mental health begins. The writer didn't ghost her after sleeping with her. He didn't lie. He didn't manipulate. He was respectful. He was careful. And when she reached out panicking, he reassured her with the facts, more than once. He is not a therapist. He is not a doctor. He is not her partner. And let's be honest. If she's 18, grown enough to be sexually active, Then she's grown enough to educate herself before hitting panic mode and blaming someone else for something biologically impossible. So, am I the asshole? No. Look, it's easy to say she's scared, have some compassion. And yes, fear does mess with people, but there's a difference between being kind and being a punching bag for someone else's meltdown. There's a limit. The writer didn't make her feel crazy. She made herself feel crazy by refusing to listen to logic. And just because she can't handle the truth doesn't mean it's the writer's job to hold her hand through a biology lesson and a mental spiral he didn't cause. So no, writer, you're not the asshole. You're just a guy who made a mistake giving someone too immature a second date. And now you're dealing with the fallout of someone who isn't ready for adult decisions, but already deep in adult situations. Let her learn the hard way, because some lessons can't be taught through texts or reassurance. They've got to come with a wake-up call.
Update.
Am I the asshole for not entertaining a girl who thinks I got her pregnant from fingering? You know how some stories just refuse to end quietly? Yeah, this one took a left turn into a comedy of awkward panic, clueless biology, and one of the most bizarre pharmacy encounters you'll ever hear. So if you remember the writer's original post, it started with 2 dates, 0 chemistry, and one absolutely outlandish pregnancy scare from fingering. Yes, fingering. That alone had people either laughing, cringing, or screaming into the void. Now, the writer admitted he initially ignored her. And yeah, maybe ghosting someone who's terrified she's the Virgin Mary 2.0 is Mary 2.0 isn't the nicest move. But let's be real, he wasn't trying to be cruel. He had already explained repeatedly that there was 0 chance she was pregnant. No sperm transfer, no mystery conception, just 2 awkward dates and a girl in way over her head. But the pressure built up. Her texts didn't stop. Friends chimed in. Some told the writer it was funny. Others said, dude, at least help her take a test. So finally, the writer decides to do the mature thing. He reaches out, apologizes for ghosting, and tells her they should settle this once and for all with a pregnancy test. Good call, right? They meet up. He drives her to a pharmacy, buys her 2 tests, double the accuracy, double the reassurance, no half measures. She heads into the pharmacy bathroom. He waits outside, respectful, probably scrolling TikTok and wondering how his life turned into an episode of Sex Ed for Dummies. Then comes the twist. 10 minutes pass. She comes out, but instead of answers, she's staring at the stick like it's a glitching magic 8-ball. No lines, no result, just blank. And then she hits him with it. I think I took it wrong. Pause. What? She goes on to explain that she forgot to take the white cap off. The literal part you're supposed to pee on. That's right. She tried to use a pregnancy test with the protective cap still on, like it was a decorative baton. Now, writer's sitting there, probably half shocked, half dying inside. She then says she doesn't need to pee anymore, because of course she doesn't, so she'll just take the other test later when she gets home. And here's the thing, the writer, he doesn't blow up, he doesn't roast her, he just drives her home. 2 hours later, she sends him pictures, 2 crisp, clear, negative results, just like the rest of us knew it would be. The sky is blue, water is wet, and fingering without sperm doesn't result in babies. The writer responds, oh, okay, good. She likes the message. No follow-up, no can we talk, no more articles from terrifying corners of the internet. Radio silence. And just like that, it's over. No baby. No future text, no unplanned co-parenting saga. So, what can we take from this? Well, first off, sex ed is not optional. Second, sometimes you're not being cruel by stepping back, you're protecting your peace. And third, when you have to explain basic biology, it might be time to stop dating teenagers. So to wrap it up, no, writer, you are not the asshole. You didn't mistreat her. You tried to be calm, respectful, and even helpful after being dragged into a situation that never should have existed in the first place. You did more than most people would have, and maybe now, just maybe, she'll Google how pregnancy actually works before spiraling next time. Or at least take the cap off the damn test. Am I the asshole for telling my mom her husband is just the guy she cheated on my dad with? All right, strap in. This one isn't about petty disagreements or someone forgetting to do the dishes. This is deep-rooted, generational, gut-punch family trauma. A story that simmers beneath the surface for years, until one moment it explodes. The writer was just 10 years old when the world cracked open. Divorce, but not just any divorce. This one came with sirens, with screaming, with a woman, hurt and betrayed, showing up at their house and shouting the truth into the sky for everyone to hear. Her mother had been having an affair. And the guy? He wasn't just some secret fling. No, he was married too. Double betrayal. The other woman, his wife, wasn't quiet about it either. She stormed the house. She screamed in the yard. She had to be dragged away by police. You think a 10-year-old doesn't remember that? Oh, but they do. The writer knew the truth. Not because someone sat her down and explained, but because it played out like a soap opera on her front lawn. Her mom, instead of owning it, tried to spin it, blaming the writer's dad for letting her find out. But at 14, the writer finally snapped and told her mother flat out, "I'm not deaf. I was never that clueless." Let's talk about this new husband for a second. The so-called stepdad, the affair partner turned husband. This man, who was a walking symbol of betrayal in the writer's life, tried to ease into a fatherly role. Imagine the audacity, thinking he could patch over the chaos he helped create by playing dad. Nope, the writer shut that down hard, every time, with precision. You don't get to play father when you're the reason her family fell apart in the first place. And sure, the writer admits it. Technically, no one steals anyone. Adults make choices. Her mother made a choice, and it was a choice that wrecked everything for her daughter. Then came another hit. When she was 19, her real dad died. Devastating. Irreplaceable. And what did the writer do? She didn't even tell her mom. Let that sink in. The grief was so heavy, the betrayal so deep, that she intentionally kept her mom in the dark. The funeral came and went. Her mom found out after the fact. And honestly, the writer didn't feel bad. She didn't want her there. Especially not with him, the man who was never supposed to be in their lives to begin with. But that wasn't the end. Years later, as the writer planned her wedding, guess what happened? Her mom and that same man decided this was their redemption arc. That now was the moment for him to step in, put on a suit, and be father of the bride. As if all that trauma, all that silence, all that loss could be brushed aside for a photo op. Instead, the writer asked her grandfather to walk her down the aisle. And when her mom found out, she snapped. She asked, "What the hell were you thinking?" Said the man had been there since you were 10. Claimed he was more than some random guy. And that's when the writer dropped the line that burned through years of buried pain. "He's just the guy you cheated on my dad with, nothing more." Raw, honest, brutal. No sugarcoating, no walking it back. Her mom called it childish, vindictive. Said the writer needed to get over it and that she was punishing them for something that had nothing to do with her. But that's the thing. It had everything to do with her. When you rip a family apart, you don't get to dictate how the fallout lands. You don't get to decide when the damage should stop hurting. Affairs don't just end when the marriage does. They leave stains on birthdays, holidays, funerals, weddings. They echo. And the writer didn't lash out to be cruel. She wasn't seeking revenge. She was just finally saying it out loud. This isn't punishment. This is consequence. Her mom made a decision. So did that man. And now they get to live with it. So, am I the asshole? Let's be real. No, not even close. This isn't about revenge. It's about boundaries. It's about a daughter reclaiming her truth. A child who lived through years of tension, confusion, and betrayal finally standing up and saying, "You don't get to rewrite my story." Some wounds don't fade with time, and some people need to be reminded why the scars exist. So no, writer, you're not the asshole. You're just the one finally telling the truth out loud. Am I the asshole for not letting my sister bring her baby to my child-free wedding because she didn't let me attend her child-free wedding when I was 13? All right, let's talk about family, hypocrisy, and the kind of double standards that make your blood simmer. The writer, now 26, is finally getting married. It's her turn, her moment. After years of being treated like the footnote in someone else's story, she's the one in the spotlight. But just when things are supposed to be magical, peaceful, even just a little bit fair, the ghosts of old wounds rise up with a vengeance. Because this isn't just about a baby at a wedding. This is about what happens when people rewrite history and expect you to pretend you forgot the original script. Let's rewind the clock. 13 years ago, the writer was just 13, a teenager, still young, still sensitive, but old enough to remember the sting of being excluded. Her sister, 15 years older, already a grown woman in her late 20s, was planning the wedding of her dreams. A grand, glamorous affair, the kind she'd fantasized about since before the writer was even born. And then came the rule: no kids allowed. Okay, fine, fair enough, but here's the kicker: even the writer wasn't allowed to attend. Let's just sit with that. 13 years old enough to understand decorum, old enough to behave, old enough to sit quietly through a ceremony, and yet she was banned, excluded, brushed aside in the name of consistency. So other guests wouldn't feel bad leaving their babies behind, even though most of them didn't have kids at all. That wasn't just a rule. That was a rejection. That was her own sister telling her, "You don't belong on my big day," and it only got more humiliating. Her parents protested. Her sister held the wedding hostage until they caved and paid for the reception. Her future husband sobbed, trying to hold the pieces together. And the writer? She stayed home with a babysitter while her family got dressed up, laughed, toasted, and celebrated right down the road without her. That kind of thing sticks. It plants itself in your memory like a thorn. Fast forward 13 years, now it's the writer's wedding, and she too has chosen a child-free ceremony. But unlike her sister, she's not being unreasonable, she's flexible. Her brother's daughter, now 12, is mature enough to attend. And so is her sister's 12-year-old. But the 1-year-old baby, she kindly says no. And this is when everything blows up. Her sister, who once coldly banned her 13-year-old sibling from a wedding packed with adults, suddenly has the audacity to throw a tantrum over her own baby not being allowed to come. She even stoops so low as to drunk dial the writer's in-laws, calling her names, trying to poison the well before the wedding even happens. She tries to blow it all up. Over what? One baby. You want to talk about double standards? This woman weaponized the same policy when it suited her. But now, because the rules apply to her, suddenly it's cruel, suddenly it's personal, suddenly she's painting herself as the victim. Again, she doesn't stop there. She pulls her 12-year-old daughter from the wedding too. Not because she had to, but out of spite. And then spins the narrative that the writer crushed her niece's dreams. Let's be clear, that little girl was excited, she wanted to be there. But her own mother took that away to make a point, to punish the writer, to play martyr. And then she has the nerve to say she's never hurt the writer. Never? Never? She erased the writer from her wedding, made her feel invisible, and now she's doing it again, just in a different costume. Let's call this what it is: emotional manipulation at its finest. The writer, through all of this, is trying to be fair. She didn't go full revenge. She didn't ban both kids. She didn't bring up the past out of bitterness. She just wanted one peaceful, drama-free day to celebrate with the people she loves. And instead, her sister turned it into a mess. So is the writer the asshole? No, not even close. She's someone who remembers what it's like to be left behind. Someone who was scarred by her sister's choices and still managed to take the high road. She could have been petty. She could have banned everyone and everything, but she didn't. She just drew one single reasonable boundary, and her sister treated it like betrayal. This isn't about a baby. It's about control. It's about entitlement. It's about a sister who's never once acknowledged the pain she caused, but demands that pain be hidden just to protect her feelings. And when that same sister can't be the center of attention, she turns the entire thing into a power play. The writer is not the villain here. She's not heartless. She's not bitter. She's just finally choosing herself. And honestly, that's something more people should be brave enough to do. Am I the asshole for telling my wife to stay in our own home instead of sleeping at her sister's all the time? This one cuts deep, and it's got everything. Love slowly slipping through the cracks, cold dinners, a marriage that's starting to feel one-sided, and a man slowly unraveling in the quiet. Let's dive in. You ever feel married but somehow still completely alone? The writer's not talking about petty arguments or mismatched love languages. This isn't about someone leaving their socks on the floor or forgetting to load the dishwasher. No, this is something else, something heavier. This is about coming home to a house that feels more like a ghost town than a home. And worse, the person you love is the one choosing to haunt it. The writer paints the scene clearly. Day after day, he comes home from work exhausted. We're talking the kind of tired that isn't just physical, it's in your bones. That please let someone else drive my life for a few minutes kind of tired. But instead of warmth, a hug, or even just someone to sit next to while you both silently scroll through your phones, it's silence. A cold, empty room. No wife, no note, no signs of life. It's just nothing. Because she's not there. Not most nights. Not some nights. Most. She's at her sister's place, sleeping over again and again and again. And when the writer finally speaks up, when he finally says something after swallowing the loneliness night after night, he doesn't scream, he doesn't rage, he just asks, plain and tired, "Can you please stay home?" Not exactly the line of a controlling monster, but her reaction? Cold. Defensive. She tells him he knew how close she and her sister were, that this is nothing new. And yeah, the writer admits he did know they were close. But being close to your sister doesn't mean turning your husband into a roommate you occasionally pass in the hallway. Because what's happening here isn't about sisterly bonding. It's about neglect. And here's where it gets heavy. Because when the writer pushes back, when he dares to say, "Hey, I miss you. This isn't what I thought marriage was going to be," he gets slammed with accusations. Now suddenly he's the bad guy. He's controlling, he's insecure, he's isolating her. Even the sister joins in with a long-winded message, calling him selfish for wanting, get this, a wife who actually sleeps in their marital bed. It's flipped upside down. He's not asking her to cut off her family. He's not telling her where she can and can't go. He's not demanding 24/7 attention or acting like she's property. He just wants his damn wife to come home, to eat dinner with him, to sit on the couch, to laugh about stupid shows, to go to bed and wake up together. The bare minimum of what most people picture when they say, "I do." So now he's wondering, am I the asshole for that? For wanting connection in my own damn marriage? Let's be brutally honest here. No, writer. You are not the asshole. You're a man at the edge of emotional burnout, trying to save a marriage that's slowly becoming a long-distance situationship under the same roof. You're not asking her to cut off her sister. You're asking her to show up. For you. For your marriage. For the life you thought you were building together. Because if she wanted to live with her sister, she could have signed a lease with her, not married you. Marriage isn't about controlling someone, but it is about choosing each other every day, even when you're tired, even when life is chaotic, even when your sister's place has comfier couches and stocked wine. And if someone can't come home even for that, if they'd rather be elsewhere, constantly, then maybe the question isn't, are you being controlling? Maybe the question is she even in this marriage at all? So no, writer, you're not selfish, you're not controlling, you're just heartbroken and trying your best. And sadly, sometimes being the only one trying still isn't enough. Am I the asshole for refusing to babysit my sister-in-law's kids after I saw text messages between her and my mother-in-law saying horrible things about me? Let's start from the top. The writer, 26F, has been married into a family that, let's be honest, has always kept her at arm's length. She's never had beef with them outright, but there's been tension. You know the kind, fake smiles, backhanded compliments, quiet side eyes at every family dinner. Nothing explosive, just enough to make you feel like you're walking on eggshells every time you're in their presence. Still, the writer has done her best. She's shown up, stayed polite, played the peacemaker, and recently, she took on a role no one asked for, but everyone expected: free, full-time, on-demand babysitter. 2 months ago, her sister-in-law, 30F, slid into her DMs, or more likely, brought it up over some carefully worded conversation, asking if she could babysit her 2 kids, a 4-year-old daughter and 7-year-old son. Her reasoning? She needed time for herself. Girlfriend nights, brunches, personal care. And since the writer didn't work weekends, this just made sense, right? Wrong. The writer hesitated. Babysitting two young kids isn't some walk in the park, especially not for free. But her husband, eager to keep the peace and probably terrified of his family's drama, convinced her it'd be a great bonding opportunity, that it might smooth out the tension between her and Sile, and most of all, that it would make his life easier. So she said yes. She sacrificed her weekends. She showed up. She fed the kids. Sile at least paid for food. Let's give her that. Played with them. Kept them safe. Made them laugh. Not for money. Not for praise. Just for peace. Just to be kind. Just to help. She thought that maybe, just maybe, this was a step forward. That the relationship was shifting slowly into something warmer. But all of that goodwill, all that effort, it came crashing down in a single moment at one of those mandatory family dinners. You know, the kind where everyone pretends nothing's wrong, even though the air feels like it's holding its breath. The writer was sitting next to Sile on the couch. Sile's phone lights up, a message from her mother-in-law. The notification preview was impossible to miss. She's so annoying. I don't know how you put up with her. Gut punch. Everything stopped. Now, this wasn't some random group chat. This was a private conversation between Sile and Mill, just casually trashing the writer, the same woman who's been caring for her children every weekend for free. And in that moment, something inside the writer snapped, quietly but permanently. She didn't explode. She didn't cause a scene. She simply did the human thing. She confronted it. With her husband by her side, she asked them why. Why say those things? After everything? After all the time, all the effort? The response? Oh, they flipped it. Instantly. You shouldn't have been snooping. That was a private conversation. You crossed a boundary. Classic deflection. Zero accountability. A weak, barely there apology followed, not because they were sorry, but because they got caught. Her husband? Silent. Shrinking into the wallpaper. Useless. So yeah, the writer was done. Fast forward a few days. Sil, in true audacious form, has the nerve to ask the writer if she's free this Sunday to babysit again. Just like that. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just entitlement wrapped in denial. And the writer? She finally said what she should have said months ago. No. No excuses. No pretending. No fake smiles. And that, my friends, sent the whole family spiraling. Now Sil, Mill, and even the writer's own husband are playing victim, saying she's overreacting, accusing her of blowing things out of proportion. Let's be clear. This isn't about one babysitting request. This is about being disrespected, used, and expected to keep smiling anyway. The writer wasn't just asked to watch kids. She was asked to sacrifice her time, her boundaries, and her dignity to a family that never once returned the favor. And now, because she finally drew a line in the sand, she's the problem? Please. This family didn't want peace. They wanted a punching bag they could dress up as a caregiver. And her husband sleeping in the guest room because she dared to ask for respect? That's not love. That's cowardice. So is the writer the asshole? Absolutely not. She gave and gave and gave. And the one time she said enough, they all lost their minds. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to let people be mad, because your silence doesn't buy their respect. It only tells them they can keep treating you like you're invisible. So no, she's not the asshole. She's finally waking up. And if that makes them uncomfortable, good. Maybe it's time they felt something other than entitled. Am I the asshole for wanting to break up with him for being a good dad? All right, strap in, because this one isn't just about a breakup. It's about confusion, disrespect, mixed signals, emotional whiplash, and the quiet kind of grief that sneaks in when love starts to rot under the surface. Let's break this down. The writer, 30 years old, emotionally mature, thoughtful, respectful, has been in a 3-year relationship with Kyle, 32. Kyle has kids. And from the jump, the writer knew that. She didn't flinch. She didn't complain. She respected the dynamic. She even helped, babysat, showed up, got along with the ex-wife. This wasn't one of those step-parent horror stories. She was building something with patience and care. This wasn't just some fling. They were planning to move in together. This was serious. Then Father's Day rolls around, and that's when things start to get strange. The writer spends her day with her dad, nothing unusual. Kyle spends his with his kids, again, perfectly expected. But then, out of nowhere, this man sends her a message. A completely unsolicited, unprovoked, emotionally loaded message. I will always put my kids before you. Just that. No context, no lead up, just a straight punch to the gut. And yeah, that's a line no one should ever have to hear like that. Let's get something clear. Nobody is saying a man shouldn't love his children. Of course, kids come first. That's not up for debate. But the writer never questioned that. She embraced it. So why the hell did he feel the need to weaponize it? The writer, rightfully confused, did what any emotionally intelligent adult would do. She asked questions. She tried to understand where this was coming from. Was there a trigger? Did someone say something? Was there miscommunication? But instead of clarity, Kyle gives her arrogance. He doubles down, says she needs to know her place, like she's being ranked, like she's applying for a job and someone just informed her she'll always be middle management. Know your place. Let that sink in for a second. That's not love. That's not protection. That's not boundaries. That's belittler, keeps her cool. Still, she tries to talk. Still, she pushes for resolution. But every time, Kyle responds the same way, calls her jealous, petty, insecure. Like, the simple act of asking for emotional clarity is an attack on his parenting. At a certain point, it stops being a misunderstanding and starts becoming emotional manipulation. And then comes the final straw. The writer, after trying for the 100th time to have a real, honest conversation, is met with anger, accusations, gaslighting. She asks if he's cheating with his ex. Because let's be honest, when someone starts randomly reasserting their priorities and dismissing your emotions as jealousy, you start wondering what the hell is really going on. His response? The usual. You're crazy, insecure, overreacting, can't handle being with a real dad. He even tells her to stay away from dads next time. Like, this relationship blowing up is her fault. Like, 3 years of her showing up, respecting boundaries, just building a future, meant nothing. And you know what? She's done. She ends it. And here's where this story cuts deep. It's not just about losing a partner. The writer didn't just walk away from a man. She walked away from the whole life they were building. She's grieving the milestones she won't see, the birthdays she won't be invited to, the kids she bonded with and now has to erase from her life like they were a failed attachment. And that hurts in a way people don't talk about enough. The writer wasn't mad that Kyle was a good dad. She loved that he was a good dad. What hurt was the fact that he weaponized that goodness, used it as a shield, as an excuse to avoid vulnerability, accountability, or commitment. He turned being a father into a trump card he could throw down any she asked for basic emotional respect. So let's be brutally honest here. No, writer, you are not the asshole. You weren't petty. You weren't insecure. You were trying to love a man who, instead of treating you like a partner, treated you like an afterthought. And when he saw you starting to build roots in his life, he yanked them out with one cold, dismissive line. Know your place. But here's the thing. Your place isn't beneath anyone. Your place is beside someone who sees your worth, not someone who needs to remind you you'll never come first. Like, that's some kind of test you're failing. You showed grace, you gave chances, you did everything right. So walking away? That wasn't weakness, that was strength. Because loving someone should never mean constantly proving you're not a threat to their priorities. It should mean being part of them. You didn't walk away from a good dad, writer. You walked away from a man who didn't know how to be a good partner. And that's not on you. AITA for not missing my dad's wife while they were separated and not pretending I did either? Let's not sugarcoat it. This story runs deep. It's not about chores. It's not about homework. This is a story about grief, boundaries, and a woman who couldn't understand she was walking on sacred ground. Our writer, just 17 years old, lost his mother when he was 2. That's a brutal age to lose a parent. Old enough to know something's missing, too young to understand what it means. And for years, that wound was quietly cradled by his grandparents, his mom's parents, who stepped up, loved him, raised him, became his safe space in a world that took too much too soon. So, when his dad met someone new and brought her into their lives, the writer did what a lot of kids do in that situation. He gave her a chance. And at first, it was fine, even decent. But things shifted after the wedding. Suddenly, she wasn't just dad's wife, she wanted to be mom. She asked to adopt him, and when the writer said no, it was like a switch flipped. She didn't just get hurt, she took offense. Like his grief, his loyalty to his mom and grandparents was a personal rejection. And that's where this whole thing started to spiral. From there, it wasn't just awkward, it was invasive. She stopped respecting the dynamic they had and started forcing a role he never agreed to. Driving him to school unasked, trying to limit his time with the only maternal figures he's ever known, expecting extra calls, more check-ins, wanting to be in every corner of his life like she'd earned that spot. Spoiler, she didn't. It was like she couldn't grasp that love and connection don't grow from guilt. They grow from trust. And she bulldozed through his boundaries with a smile on her face. Let's talk about Mother's Day, because this is where it really gets raw. The writer has a tradition. He honors his mother by spending the day with her parents. That's his way. That's his comfort. But this woman, she wanted to insert herself there too, demanded to be the center of that day. And when his half-siblings came along, that only made her more insistent. Like somehow, her becoming a biological mom gave her the right to rewrite the narrative. But here's the truth. Having more kids doesn't overwrite the loss of a parent. It doesn't erase the love the writer has for his mom or the family that still grieves her. Fast forward, February 20th, 2024. The wife moves out. March, she files for divorce. Why? Because in her words, she couldn't stand feeling like just the wife, not a mom, not fully part of the family. But the twist? She wasn't excluded. She excluded herself by refusing to meet the writer where he was emotionally. Instead of being the steady, respectful presence she once was, she wanted full-blown motherhood on her terms. And when she didn't get it, she bailed. Now this next part is wild. After 13 months of not being around, she comes back, divorce canceled, moving back in, and she expects everything to just reset, like nothing happened. The writer doesn't explode. He doesn't throw a tantrum, he says hi, he goes to his room, he minds his own business, but apparently that was too cold for her. She confronts him in front of his dad, asking why he didn't miss her, why he couldn't even pretend, why he couldn't act like it mattered. Let's stop here. How do you miss someone who made your grief harder? How do you fake affection for someone who tried to erase the people who were there when your world fell apart? The writer tells her straight, if she could accept being more of an aunt figure, they might be okay. But the forced mom routine, it drives him crazy. And instead of hearing that and reflecting, she crumbles again, says he didn't even try to hide how little he missed her. And then comes the cherry on top. She wants him to pretend, to lie, to fake affection, to stroke her ego so she can feel more like a mother, even if it means trampling the truth of a kid who never asked for any of this. Let me be real here. The writer's not cold-hearted. He's just exhausted. He's spent years trying to defend the memory of his mom, protect the bond with his grandparents, and navigate the emotional demands of a woman who couldn't understand that love doesn't come with a marriage certificate. His dad, to his credit, he gets it. He tells her to accept reality, he sees the truth. So, is the writer the asshole? Hell no. He's a teenager dealing with grief, blended family pressure, and a woman who made his loss about herself. And not once did he explode, scream, or disrespect her. He laid down a boundary, and instead of honoring it, she asked him to lie. You don't get to guilt someone into loving you. You don't get to rewrite their history to make yourself feel better. And you definitely don't get to demand affection from someone whose healing you've made harder. So no, writer, you're not the asshole. You're a kid who's been forced to grow up in a house where someone else's feelings mattered more than your truth. And that takes guts to stand up to. Am I the asshole? Sold her shoes since she sold my magic collection. All right, folks, this is one of those stories that starts with cardboard and ends with chaos, magic cards and stilettos, love and betrayal, and somewhere in the middle, a guy, our writer, just trying to hold on to the last scrap of himself in a relationship that blew up like a poorly cast fireball. Let's dive in. The writer, a 23-year-old man, had something he loved. No, not just his girlfriend, not just his apartment. He had a Magic the Gathering collection. And if you know anything about MTG players, it's not just a hobby. It's history, it's strategy, it's hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars in cardboard gold. But more than that, it's personal. Now life happens. Work, school, relationships, time slips away. The writer admits he hasn't played in a while, but that doesn't mean the cards meant any less to him. It's like boxing up your childhood memories and keeping them safe under your bed. A link to who you were and maybe who you still want to be. But then enters the girlfriend, 22 years old, no warning, no conversation, no, hey, what are you doing with this collection? She just takes it. She walks into the writer's room, snatches his storage locker, and marches straight to a card shop to sell the whole thing. Let me pause right there. She sold it without permission, behind his back. And if that wasn't bad enough, she convinced the card shop, some shady, opportunistic back alley vendor, to cut the damn lock off. Like this was some Ocean's 11 heist, but sadder and way more disrespectful. When the writer confronts her, understandably furious, her defense, you don't play anymore. That's it. That's her whole justification for selling off something that didn't belong to her because he didn't use it recently. Imagine that logic applied to anything else. Oh, you didn't drive your car last week. I sold it. You didn't wear your coat all winter. Sold it too. Wild. The writer kicks her out, as he should. But let me be clear. It's not just about the cards. It's about the betrayal, the disregard, the way she cried and lashed out with hateful insults when she got caught. That tells you everything. So yeah, the writer locks himself in the bathroom, not to hide, but to stay sane, to avoid escalating the argument, to give himself a second to breathe and decide what to do next. And when she finally leaves, he snaps. He goes full revenge mode, gathers all her shoes, and it's every pair. Flats, heels, probably some overpriced boots she wore once to brunch. Petty? Absolutely. But in that moment, was it satisfying? You bet it was. Now she finds out, and what does she do? Not talk, not reflect. She punches the writer, and he hits back. Not with his fists, but with the same twisted reasoning she gave him. Well, you never wear them. Boom. And now, she refuses to return the extra key to his apartment. You want to talk about nerve? This woman stole from him, punched him, and now she's holding on to a key like this with some romantic comedy, and she's still got a role in his life. Ryder tries to move on, gets a visit from his mom. Shout out to moms who bring donuts and save lives, and together they talk to the landlord. The landlord laughs, flirts with mom, which low-key we respect, and lets him know that, yeah, breakups like this, they happen. Lock gets changed, crisis avoided, and then to his credit, the writer does something big. He rounds up the money from the shoe sale, gives it back to the ex, and tells her to return what she got for his magic cards. No court battle, no cops, no screaming match in the parking lot, just closure. Maybe it's not perfect. Maybe he'll never see those cards again. But the point is, he gets his dignity back. He gets to breathe again in his own space. And hopefully, he learns that no matter how good someone seems on the outside, if they can't respect your boundaries, they don't get to keep access to your life. So, is the writer the asshole? No, he's not. He was a man pushed into a corner, disrespected on multiple levels, and yeah, he got petty, but can you blame him? Sometimes, the only way to show someone how bad they messed up is to let them feel it. And that's what she got, a taste of her own ruthless logic. You don't get to sell someone's passion and then cry when they give you a taste of that same medicine. You want to act like someone's stuff doesn't matter? Then don't act surprised when yours suddenly doesn't either. This story isn't about cards or shoes, it's about respect. And once that's gone, there's no relationship worth saving. Writer, you're not the asshole. You're just someone who learned the hard way. Don't love someone who treats your life like it's disposable. And next time, maybe get a better lock. Am I the asshole for telling my Bill that someone is going to punch his girlfriend one day? So here we are. One wedding, one girlfriend, one bottle of booze too many, and a situation that spiraled out of meh and landed straight in what in the actual hell is wrong with her territory. Let's set the stage. The writer's older sister just got married. Lovely, right? Only catch, her and her now husband are polyamorous. And look, no shade to that. The writer made it clear. She's tried it, didn't vibe with it, moved on. But no judgment. That's not the issue here. Her sister's boyfriend? Cool guy, chill. Holiday events were fine. But the problem? Brother-in-law's girlfriend, Sally. Oh, Sally. The writer met her once before at the engagement party, and the red flags were already flapping in the wind like a damn parade. You ever meet someone who just has to be the center of attention? Who doesn't understand volume control or basic social dynamics? That's Sally. She was talking over people, inserting herself into moments that weren't hers, insisting on opening wedding gifts with the bride, and even going so far as to tell everyone she was the reason this wedding was happening, because she was officiating. Yes, you read that right. She said she was the reason the couple was getting married. But wait, it gets worse. Once the wine hit her bloodstream, Sally took it upon herself to go on a loud, aggressive rant about how monogamy is disgusting, how it ruins relationships, how anyone who isn't poly is insecure, scared, jealous, and controlling. Imagine standing in a room full of people at a joyous occasion and being told your relationship is fundamentally broken because you're not seeing 5 people at once. Yeah, guests left. Fast. The writer, still holding it together, is helping her sister clean up after the party when Sally decides she needs to interrogate the writer about her stance on polyamory. Sis steps in, tries to shut it down, but Sally don't care, so the writer calmly explains, "Hey, I tried it. It wasn't for me. I'm in a monogamous relationship now and happy." Sally's response, she pouts, stomps off, and goes to bed like a teenager grounded on prom night. Sister later admits, yeah, Sally kind of makes poly her entire personality. It's been a problem before. So, fine, writer lets it go. One drunk night, one loud guest. It's over. Until the wedding. Everything starts beautifully. The ceremony is gorgeous, vibes are high, everyone's happy. Then, the writer notices her boyfriend has been gone a little too long after heading to grab drinks. She goes looking and finds him backed up, literally cornered, against the wall near the drink table, with Sally in his face. She's rubbing his arm, getting close, not taking no for an answer. He's trying to step away and she keeps stepping in. The moment he sees the writer, you can practically hear the sigh of relief. Sally tries to pass it off with a giggle and "I was just telling him how much I love gingers." No. Nope. Done. The writer, absolutely done with the disrespect, the boundary stomping, the non-stop performative nonsense, leans in and hits her with, "Stop being a fucking cunt. There are plenty of single people here you can hit on." Mic, drop. They walk away. Crisis averted, or so they thought. A few days later, the brother-in-law texts the writer telling her she owes Sally an apology. His reason? Flirting is part of her personality. Excuse me? That's like saying pickpocketing is someone's personality and we should just let them do it. So the writer, completely fed up, tells him flat out, one day she's going to come across someone less nice than me and she's going to get her shit rocked. And boom, chaos. Beal calls her petty. Sister and mom say, nah, that girl was being disrespectful. So now there's division, drama, and a whole lot of tension. But wait, we're not done. Update 1. The writer talks with her sister and Bill. Everyone's agreed. They need a sit down. But writer puts her foot down. Sally is not coming. There's no way her boyfriend is sitting across from the woman who cornered him and made him uncomfortable. Respect. Beal, still holding on to his sweetie baby rose-colored glasses, wants Sally to defend herself. But no, writer's not here to entertain nonsense. Update 2. Now things go off the rails. The sister finally tells Bill what happened after they returned from their honeymoon. Bill texts Sally asking for her side of the story, and she straight up lies. She says all she did was call the boyfriend cute, and the writer just went berserk, calling her a cant and saying a bunch of polyphobic garbage, which is complete fiction. What's worse? Bil, who has known the writer for over a decade, believes Sally. Let that sink in. They get Sally on the phone, and within minutes her story collapses like a dollar store tent. She contradicts herself. She says she was pushed, then says no, maybe the writer just reached toward her. Then she claims she can't remember what was said, but if she was called a cunt, then probably other stuff happened too. Ma'am, what? She lies, gets caught, fumbles, blames memory loss, then still wants to act like she's the victim. And the writer's sitting there like, why would I ever believe a known liar over the man I've been with for 3 solid years? Exactly. Finally, after all that mess, Betrayal apologizes, says he was thrown off because Sally made herself sound so hurt in her messages. Yeah, crocodile tears will do that, but now he's not sure if he'll stay with her. Honestly, the fact that's even a question is wild, but the writer, she doesn't care. She's done. She's not going to any more poly weddings, engagement parties, or events that involve this walking, talking chaos machine. So, am I the asshole for telling my Bill that someone is going to punch his girlfriend one day? Not even close. Ryder did what so many people don't. She set a boundary. She stood up for her boyfriend. She refused to let someone flirt their way into his personal space and then lie her way out of it. She didn't sugarcoat. She didn't play games. She called it exactly what it was. And to anyone who thinks that's too harsh, maybe they've never had someone cross a line and try to gaslight their way back across it. Sometimes the truth doesn't come in polite sentences. Sometimes the truth is, if you act reckless, loud, and disrespectful long enough, you're eventually going to run into someone who doesn't care about your personality. They'll care about their own dignity. And that's exactly what the writer did. Am I the asshole for dropping out of my friend's wedding after she sent me a 47-item bridesmaid requirements list? All right, this one is wild. We're talking full-blown wedding tyranny levels of control here. Let's get into it. So the writer, like many of us, had a close friend. We'll call her Sarah. And a few months ago, Sarah popped the classic question, will you be my bridesmaid? Naturally, the writer said yes, no hesitation. It was supposed to be a sweet honor, right? A moment of friendship, celebration, and support. But then came the Google Doc. Now, at first glance, the writer assumed it would be the usual stuff. Color scheme, dress preferences, maybe some info about fittings or dates. Totally reasonable. But no, this wasn't a bridesmaid info sheet. This was a demands manifesto. 47, 7 individually numbered, like a dystopian contract that you don't even get to sign. You just comply. Let's unpack a few of these gems. Mandatory spray tans. Not, hey, a tan might look good, but mandatory. And she's not even letting you book it on your own. She's making the appointments herself. So not only do you have to do it, you have to do it her way. Then there's the $400 hair and makeup requirement. Non-negotiable. You're not allowed to opt out, not even if you're broke, allergic, or just hate fake lashes. You're dropping $400 on top of everything else because Sarah said so. But wait, it gets worse. You can't post any photos from the events unless she gives her personal individual approval. That's right, your phone, your memories, not yours anymore. It's all under Sarah's surveillance. And the pièce de résistance? Bridesmaids are expected to contribute $200 each to her bachelorette party, on top of planning and paying for it. So you're supposed to do the work and fund the fun? Sounds like a pyramid scheme wrapped in a tiara. And then there was item number 47, the cherry on this perfectly absurd cake. Remember, this is my day, and your job is to make me shine. Oh, really? Not to celebrate love or friendship? Not to stand with someone you care about in a beautiful moment? Nope. Just to orbit around Her Highness Bridezilla I. So, the writer, being a sane, self-respecting human being, texted Sarah and said, hey, this is a lot. I can't commit to all of this, and I think I need to step down. Cue the meltdown. Sarah calls her, crying, accusing her of being a bad friend. Says real friends would do anything, even if it takes sacrifice. But real friends don't weaponize guilt and use their wedding as a throne of entitlement. Real friends respect your time, your wallet, your autonomy. And here's the kicker. More than half the friend group didn't even believe the list was real. They asked to see it because it was so outrageous that it sounded made up. That's how off the rails this thing was. So now the writer is left wondering, am I the asshole for backing out? Let's be brutally honest here. Absolutely not. In fact, I'd argue the writer was one of the few sane people in this social circle. There's nothing wrong with saying yes to being a bridesmaid, but when that yes turns into financial exploitation, physical demands, and digital control, that's not a wedding. It's an unpaid job with emotional blackmail as the dress code. This isn't about one spray tan or a dress color. This is about how far someone is willing to push their friends under the veil of, it's my special day. The writer didn't abandon a friend. She escaped a dictatorship. So no, writer, you're not the asshole. You're just the only one brave enough to call out the madness. And something tells me that Google Doc, it's going to be famous in that friend group for a long, long time. Am I the asshole for flirting with another girl after my girlfriend introduced me as a friend? Picture it. Friday night, neon bar lights, cheap beer sweating down the glass, a half circle of coworkers clinking shots and showing off after a long week. The writer, 28, Indian, 2 years deep in a supposedly solid relationship, walks in, power bank in hand, ready to play the supportive boyfriend, and walks straight into a social minefield. He's barely reached the table when the first torpedo hits. Who's that? And before the writer can say boyfriend, his girlfriend, the woman he's moved cities for, lived with, loved, and imagined a future alongside, smiles wide and drops the grenade. Oh, that's my friend. He brought me a charger. So sweet, right? Friend. Just like that, 2 years get swept under the table like spilled peanuts. The writer freezes. A split-second choice, swallow the sting or call it out. He tries humor. Friend, but she brushes it off with a laugh and a breezy wave, shooing him away like an Uber Eats driver who's lingered too long. That should have been the exit cue, right? But a coworker waves him over. Sit with us if you're free. And the writer, heart-pounding, pride-bleeding, thinks, fine, let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes. The slow burn humiliation conversation starts innocent. Work talk, hometown talk, harmless small talk. Each time someone tries to bridge the gap. Slaw. So how did you two meet? The girlfriend jumps in with sanitized half-truths. Reality, they met on a dating app, went on late-night noodle runs, binge-watched K-dramas, said I love you after 6 months. Girlfriend's version. Oh, we bumped into each other in a study group once. Old friends, haha. Every omission feels like another chip off the writer's dignity. He's not just a boyfriend hidden in plain sight. He's background noise. Furniture. Disposable. And the bar banter keeps circling back to him because novelty sells. Wow, you grew up in India? That's amazing. What brought you here? Your Chinese is pretty good. Did you study long? Each answer lands and his girlfriend's smile gets tighter. He can feel her praying, please don't mention we live together. Please don't mention I steal your hoodies. Please don't mention I call you Bao Bei at 2 a.m. He's half a drink away from either exploding or melting into the floor. The snap. Then it happens. That first colleague, the one who asked who he was, leans over, drunk blush on her cheeks and laughs. Girlfriend's name never told us she had such a good-looking friend. The table erupts in giggles. Girlfriend forces a polite chuckle, but her eyes scream, don't you dare. Something inside the writer clicks. If he's a friend, he'll act like one. He glances at the colleague, smiles, and drops the line. I didn't know she had such a pretty colleague either. Wink. The colleague laughs, delighted. Another coworker jokes, ooh, matchmaker, girl fame in action. Meanwhile, the girlfriend's face turns scarlet. Embarrassment, jealousy, panic, all crowding at once. The writer feels a rush of bitter satisfaction, and admittedly, an oily slice of guilt. 10 minutes later, he makes a polite excuse and leaves. The colleague shouts after him, get my number from girlfriend. He gives a thumbs up and steps into the night air, furled with heart hammering. Pride barely stitched together, but stitched nonetheless. The fallout. Accusations and excuses. Next morning, silent treatment. By evening, it's nuclear. You kind of cheated on me in front of my friends. Cheated, or finally acted like the friend you labeled me? I was socially awkward. I didn't want questions about interracial dating. Everyone else is dating Chinese or white guys. So I'm what? An inconvenience, a secret? She calls his wink mean. He calls her dismissal erasure. Neither budges. She demands an apology. He says ladies first. She insists she did nothing wrong. He refuses to crawl. What's really happening here? Respect. She denied the relationship in public, full stop. Identity. She reduced him from partner to pal because his ethnicity might spark questions. That's not awkwardness, that's cowardice. Revenge flirt. Was the writer petty? Maybe. Understandable? Absolutely. When someone shoves you off the stage, grabbing a spotlight of your own feels delicious. But cheating? Come on. A wink and a compliment don't equal betrayal. If anything, it was a mirror showing her exactly how it feels to be sidelined. So AITA.
No.
Not for flirting back. Not for cracking under the weight of public denial. The writer's move was a reflex of wounded pride, not a calculated affair. Would a calmer exit have been nobler? Sure. But nobility is hard when the person you love just erased you to avoid awkward questions. If she truly values the relationship, she apologizes first for shrinking him down to friend to dodge scrutiny. Until then, her hurt feelings are the fallout of her own choices. Verdict: the writer is not AITA. He's a human who hit his limit. And sometimes hitting back, verbally, flirtatiously, unapologetically, is the only way to make someone realize just how sharp their silence really was. AITA for telling my friend's date to shut the fuck up after he started lecturing her? So, here's the deal. The writer sets up a double date. The friend, let's call her the shy, reserved type, meets this guy who's apparently a friend of the writer's own dating interest. The vibe is good at first. Everything's casual, chill, maybe a little awkward as most first dates tend to be. But then, boom, conversation takes a nosedive. The friend casually mentions she wasn't much into drinking or smoking before college. She started to loosen up a bit after meeting the writer. Simple, innocent confession. But this dude? Oh no. He turns it into his own personal TED Talk on morality and survival. Suddenly, he's the all-knowing sage preaching doom. You're just following the crowd. You didn't do this before, so why start now? And then, as if auditioning for a role in a rehab documentary, he drops the big guns, stories about people he's seen spiral into addiction and death. Heavy stuff, right? But here's the thing. This friend, she's the quiet type. The one whose face tells you everything when she's on the verge of tears, even if she doesn't say a word. The kind of person who looks to others for backup because she's not ready to throw down for herself yet. The writer sees this, notices the shift, the silence, the embarrassment, the shrinking into herself, and decides enough is enough. Steps in to protect, to shield, to say, hey, she's fine, I got her, back off. But the guy doesn't quit. Oh no, he doubles down, goes back and forth like a broken record. You don't know what could happen. Anything could happen to her. Like, the writer's just a meddling kid who's clueless about life's hard lessons. That's the breaking point. The writer's blood boils. The polite, hey, that's enough, turns into a blunt, loud, unmistakable, shut the fuck up. The ultimatum? If he's not cool with her drinking and smoking, he should walk away. Simple as that. The aftermath? Awkward as hell. The guy's friend texts the writer, throwing shade and calling them rude. The friend, who was supposedly the one being defended, gets mad too. Says the writer went overboard, ruined things with someone she liked. But let's stop and think about this. The writer wasn't just being the loud mouth. No, they were the shield, the protector, the one who stepped into the arena when the friend couldn't. This wasn't about making enemies. It was about drawing a line in the sand. Did the writer go a bit hard? Maybe. But when someone's quietly crumbling under the weight of unsolicited lectures and moral grandstanding, sometimes you gotta be the thunderclap that stops the storm. The real question is, who's the bigger asshole here? The guy who tried to play judge and jury over someone else's choices? Or the writer who stood up and said, enough, you don't get to tear her down on my watch? The friend might be mad now, but deep down, she knows who really had her back. The guy might be nursing a bruised ego, but maybe he should check his attitude before stepping into someone else's world with a lecture. So, AITA? Hell no. The writer did what needed to be done. No sugar, no pretense, just the honest truth laid down like a boss. AITA for telling my husband that he can't come on our boys-only trip? The writer is a 30-year-old guy with a tradition he refuses to let die. Flashback to college, a tight-knit crew, cheap beer, and a half-baked idea that morphed into a sacred pact. One weekend every year. Just the boys. No girlfriends, no flings, no drama. What started as a break from midterm stress and awkward dorm hookups turned into a ritual of campfires, brutal hikes, and late-night confessions whispered under a sky so clear it felt like the universe was eavesdropping. Back then, the no partners rule was simple. Everyone was dating girls, and whenever somebody dragged along a plus one, the whole vibe imploded. Guys tiptoeing around topics, inside jokes running dry, arguments over tent space. No, thank you. So the clause was carved in stone. 0 romantic partners. One weekend a year, we get to forget we're boyfriends, husbands, employees, dads in training. Just friends. Just the herd. Fast forward a decade. Life looks different now. The writer came out, found Kevin, fell stupidly in love, and got married 2 years ago. His friends? Still solid. Still the same annual pilgrimage, same trail, same battered cooler, same rule. But here's the wrinkle. Kevin's a guy too, and this season he hits the writer with the question that lands like a spark in dry brush. Babe, I'm a boy. Why can't I come? On the surface, it sounds airtight. Boys only means, well, boys. But the writer pauses, heart thudding, because deep down he knows the truth. It's not about gender. It's about the chemistry that exists when romance isn't in the room. The second you insert a partner, no matter who they are, people reorganize around that couple. Conversations hedge. Stories censor themselves. The primal, unfiltered chaos gets polite. And polite is the mortal enemy of tradition. So the writer repeats the mantra, no partners. Kevin nods, but the smile freezes. Later that night, the silence between them stretches like a rope pulled too tight. The writer asks, what's wrong? Kevin's eyes flicker. Finally, he says it, you're pushing a heteronormative rule that never imagined a married gay couple. He says it softly, but the words sting. Now the writer's torn. He can feel the decades-old roots of this trip in one hand and his husband's hurt pride in the other. He tries to explain, dude, this isn't about pretending we're straight. It's about protecting that rare space where we all get to revert to the idiots we were at 20. Kevin listens, lips pressed in a thin line. He says he understands, but the distance stays. The goodnight kiss is quick, the morning coffee silent. Every little cold shoulder makes the writer's resolve feel less heroic and more selfish. Friends text in the group chat, pumped for the hike, oblivious to the new tension. The writer wonders, is tradition just nostalgia dressed up as principle? Is he guarding something sacred or gatekeeping something outdated? Kevin keeps his dignity. No ultimatums. Just hurt eyes and a muttered line about maybe next year. And that's what guts the writer most. Kevin isn't trying to bulldoze the rule, he just wants to be included because, yeah, he is one of the boys. The fact that romance exists shouldn't exile him from the fire pit and the inside jokes. And yet, the writer can't shake the memory of the 1 year a buddy broke the creed. The girlfriend came. The vibe died. Half the guys skipped the next trip, and it took years to feel right again. He's terrified of repeating that crash. So here he stands, boots packed, guilt heavier than the rucksack, asking the internet if holding that line makes him an asshole. Does preserving 10 guys' raw, snaggle-toothed camaraderie justify wounding the one person he pledged to put first? Or does bending the rule for love risk shattering the last ritual that still links him to the reckless kid he used to be? That's the knot. And until someone yanks it loose, the cabin in the woods is going to feel colder this year, no matter how high the campfire burns. Should I tell my GF to stop bringing her kid over every night? All right, let's talk about a situation that's not easy to navigate, because when it comes to dating someone with a kid, there's no rule book, no neat little guide to tell you where the lines are or when you're crossing them. It's murky, it's emotional. And for the writer, this one-bedroom apartment is starting to feel like a pressure cooker. So here's the setup. The writer's been dating his girlfriend for 4 months. New relationship energy, still figuring each other out, getting used to the rhythms of someone else's life. And about a month ago, he meets her kid, a 4-year-old little boy. Young enough to be clingy, old enough to notice who's around. And ever since that meeting, it's like a switch flipped. At first, it was manageable. The kid would stay over sometimes. A night here, a weekend there, totally normal. But now, it's been 2 straight weeks. Every single night, the girlfriend brings her son over from her mom's house. And suddenly, the writer's apartment, the space that used to be his zone to decompress after work, kick back, sleep in his own bed, is no longer his. Let's get real here. The writer isn't sleeping in that bed anymore. He's been on the couch for 2 weeks, every night, while his girlfriend and her kids sleep in his bed. And sure, she asks him to join them. But come on, who's really comfortable crawling into bed next to someone's kid after just 4 months of dating? Especially a 4-year-old who doesn't even sleep alone yet? That's a lot to ask, and the writer knows it. The girlfriend's reasoning? Her son cries to come over. He asks for the writer. And yeah, on the surface, that's sweet. A sign the kid feels safe, maybe even connected. But let's not pretend this isn't also a test of how much the writer can tolerate, how far he's willing to go to prove he's boyfriend material, not just to her, but maybe even to her child too. But there's a difference between being supportive and being steamrolled. Let's look at the facts. The writer hasn't asked her to ditch her kid. He's not expecting a kid-free relationship. He knows the child comes first. He even says so. But knowing that doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your comfort completely, especially not this early in the game, especially when you're sleeping on a couch in your own damn apartment. And he's not even being harsh about it. He's been patient. He's let her stay, let the kids stay, let his own sleep schedule, space, and sense of privacy take the hit, all without complaining. But now he's wondering, is it okay to want a breather? Yes, it is. This isn't about hating kids. It's not about being unsupportive. It's about boundaries. It's about pacing. It's about comfort. You don't move in a child practically full-time after 4 months into a 1-bedroom apartment that isn't even your own and just expect your partner to be cool with it indefinitely. That's not fair. And the writer? He's not being unreasonable for questioning whether this is sustainable. Hell, he's not even demanding she stop entirely. He just wants to slow down. That's all. Take a step back. Let them build their relationship without rushing into a live-in dynamic with a toddler. Because yeah, it's one thing to be a great boyfriend. It's another thing entirely to become an overnight father figure to a kid you've just met. That role requires time, trust, space to grow into. And pushing that too fast, it doesn't just strain the relationship, it burns it out. So no, the writer isn't the bad guy. He's a man trying to be thoughtful while also not losing himself in someone else's chaos. And that's fair. That's honest. This isn't about being selfish. It's about survival. Emotional, mental, and literal survival. Because no grown man should be couch surfing in his own apartment for 2 straight weeks just to avoid an awkward conversation. So, is the writer overreacting? Absolutely not. He's reacting like anyone with an ounce of self-awareness and long-term thinking would. Because wanting space doesn't make you cold, it makes you smart. Am I the asshole for thinking my wife looks less sexy after she got Botox and dyed her hair? The writer is a 51-year-old man who has spent the better part of 3 decades falling asleep next to the same woman, watching the seasons change across her face, the silver streaks arrive, the laugh lines deepen. He loved every mark time left on her because each wrinkle told a story he'd lived through with her. Sleepless nights, rocking colicky babies, Saturday morning soccer games, funerals, anniversaries, inside jokes that went on for years. Those little crow's feet, that tiny etch between her brows, they weren't flaws, they were history. Then the last kid packed a duffel and drove off to campus, and the house went echo quiet. Empty nest silence can do strange things. One day his wife looks in the mirror and doesn't see the chapters, they see the years. Overnight, she's booking a Botox appointment, buying a box of espresso brown dye, scrolling TikTok for contour tutorials. New hair, new highlight, new leggings, new energy. Same heart, but a different reflection staring back. The writer doesn't slam any brakes. He doesn't lecture her about growing old gracefully. He lets her drive. He kisses the same lips, now a half-shade plumper. He still grabs her waist when she brushes past in the hallway. But in bed, he hesitates, not on purpose. It's more like his brain stalls for half a beat. Something's off, something's changed. He still wants her, just not with that fierceness he felt for the silver-haired goddess she was becoming. She notices. Of course she notices. Is it the mortgage? Your cholesterol numbers? Are you worried about work? He brushes it away. No, everything's fine, babe. But she keeps poking because wives have a sixth sense for when intimacy shifts. Finally, one night, she corners him. Tell me the truth. What's wrong? He steels himself and does the diplomatic dance. I love you. I'm not trying to control you. You have every right to do whatever makes you feel good. I still find you sexy. But then comes the dagger he can't twist out of his gut. To me, you looked sexier before the Botox and the dye. He tries to buffer the blow. You're sexier now than you were in your 20s. True statement, but the damage is done. Her shoulders drop. She walks away carrying a quiet sadness that no vitamin C serum can fix. Now he's standing in the hallway asking Reddit, AITA! Here's the brutal truth. Wanting someone's natural face over the injected one isn't a crime. Attraction is personal, but how and when you voice that preference is everything. His wife didn't ask, which era of my face do you rank hottest on the 1 to 10 scale? She asked, what's wrong? Because she sensed emotional distance, not just aesthetic critique. Instead of tackling the real issue, her insecurity, his muted desire, the grief of aging and empty nests, he served up a cosmetic verdict. That's like responding to, why does my heart hurt? With, because your mascara's smudged. Technically, it might be honest, but it misses the wound entirely. Could he have said, I'm still adjusting to the changes. You seemed so confident with the gray and the lines, and I love that confidence. But if this makes you feel good, I'll catch up? Yep. Could he have redirected the talk to what's really scaring both of them? Time, change, identity, sex after 50? Absolutely. Instead, he quantified her beauty like a stock that dipped a few points. So is the writer an irredeemable jerk? No. He's a man stunned by transition, fumbling for words, clinging to the comfort of the face he memorized. But in this conversation, this sensitive, tender conversation, he swung with blunt honesty where gentler honesty was needed. That's what stings. Verdict? A soft. Not for having a preference, but for dropping it without the empathy her vulnerable question deserved. The fix now is less about hair dye or filler and more about sitting at the kitchen table tomorrow, taking her hands and saying, I miss the us that didn't worry who's sexy and who's aging. I loved your gray, but what I love most is how you feel inside your own skin. Let's figure out how to feel hot together. Wrinkles, needles, dye jobs, or none of it. Because the scariest change isn't in your face, it's in us backing away from each other. That conversation, raw, honest, gentle, might turn the Botox wrinkle into just another shared memory instead of the crack that split the mirror in two. AITAH for hanging up on my GF after she got sad by the guy she cheated on me with. So here we go. This one's messy. The kind of messy that leaves your chest hollow, your thoughts racing, and your trust hanging on by a thread. The writer's been in a relationship with this girl, and for the last 2 months, something's been off. You know that gut feeling? That subtle shift in tone, in timing, in presence? The kind where someone says they're out with friends, but something in your soul whispers, nah, that ain't it. That's where the writer's been. Confused, questioning, watching someone they care about act distant, detached, secretive. But still, they kept trusting, kept believing. Because when you love someone, even when your instincts scream otherwise, your heart talks louder. Then the call happens. The girlfriend calls, crying. No, not crying. Sobbing. She's in the woods, alone. Panicking, she tells the writer she's just been sexually assaulted. Instantly, the writer's entire world tilts. Fear, rage, shock, it all floods in because no matter what, no one deserves to go through that. No one deserves to feel afraid and violated. But then, the story unfolds, and suddenly, the ground under the writer's feet cracks open. The girlfriend explains she went to meet this guy, the same guy she's been sneaking around with. She didn't just end up with him by accident, she chose to go. She initiated things, and somewhere in that tangled moment between her choice and this man's vile actions, something horrible happened. Now let's pause here, because this is where everything collides. Betrayal, concern, grief, anger, shock. It's a whole damn emotional car crash, and the writer is sitting right in the driver's seat with no airbag. So what did the writer do? They hung up, not because they didn't care, not because they thought she deserved it, but because they couldn't breathe. Because the girl they loved, the one who'd been lying to them for months, had just confessed she was with another man again. And in that moment, something traumatic happened to her, and the writer's brain couldn't compute all of it at once. Their heart froze. That's the word they used. And honestly, it tracks. But what came next? That's where the knives started flying. Her friends blew up the writer's phone, calling them every name under the sun, telling them to go to hell, calling them heartless, cruel, disgusting. The girlfriend herself called them a dick. But let's just sit in reality for a minute. The writer never said they didn't care. In fact, they do. They even admitted they're still worried for her, still haunted by what happened, still wanting justice for what that man did. But they're also lost, shattered, and trying to process not just a betrayal, but a deeply traumatic event involving the person who betrayed them. This isn't some clear-cut situation with right and wrong packaged in neat little boxes. This is raw, messy, complicated. Here's the truth. The writer didn't sign up to be a villain. They were thrust into a whirlwind of betrayal and trauma all in one phone call. And when your brain is spiraling and your heart's breaking all at once, sometimes you just disconnect. Hanging up wasn't cruel. It was survival. So, is the writer the asshole? Let's be real. No, they were human. They were hit with too much, too fast. And while people are busy casting stones, and not many are acknowledging the impossible position the writer was put in. This isn't just a he said, she said. This is grief, guilt, trauma, betrayal, and heartbreak all smashing into each other. And the writer? They're just trying to breathe through the wreckage. No sugarcoating, no pretty bow, just pain. And maybe, eventually, healing. AITA, for postponing the wedding when my fiancé was demanding to be paid back the money he paid for his late wife's surgery? Okay, let's get into it. This one gets real messy, real fast. The writer, a woman just trying to enjoy the chaos and excitement of wedding planning, suddenly finds herself staring at a side of her fiancé she never expected to see. A side that made her stomach turn and her future flash red like a warning sign she couldn't ignore. She and Jake have been together for just over a year. It was all moving fast, but not in a reckless way. In a finally someone who gets me way. And Jake, he'd been through something heavy. His late wife had passed from an illness, and the grief was something that hovered around him like a silent ghost in the room. Understandable. The writer had never faulted him for it. But here's where things go off the rails. Jake told the writer from the beginning that they'd do a honeymoon, but only once a few people paid him back. Seemed harmless enough. Loans, maybe. Some debts he was owed. She didn't pry too much. People are allowed to have history, right? But then she overhears a conversation she never should have had to hear, and it hits like a brick. Jake is on the phone with his late wife's father, arguing. The man sounds heartbroken, defensive. Jake, though, he's ice cold, telling this grieving father he wants to be repaid for the money he spent on his own wife's surgery, a surgery that didn't save her, a surgery he once probably prayed would give him more time with her. And now he wants it back? The writer is stunned, absolutely frozen. Not only because of the money, because, yeah, people argue about money, but because of the complete lack of emotional respect. This isn't some business deal gone wrong. This is grief. This is loss. This is family. And here's Jake, acting like he paid for an engine replacement and the car never worked, so he wants a refund. She brings it up to him, tries to understand, but Jake snaps, gets defensive, shuts her down, tells her to stay out of it. Says it's his money and he has every right to demand it back. But the writer, she sees it differently. This isn't just about money. This is about character, about who Jake really is when no one's watching. And she does something bold. She tells him the wedding is postponed. Because how do you walk down the aisle with someone who treats love and loss like a transaction? She's not canceling it, not yet. But she needs space, needs time. And of course, because nothing says emotional maturity like bringing in backup, Jake goes and rallies his friends to talk some sense into her. Like she's the problem here. The writer retreats to her mom's house. She's shaken, questioning herself. Her mother even tells her she might have overstepped by getting involved in that part of his past. But let's be real for a second. When you're about to marry someone, everything about them becomes part of your future, including how they treat grief, including how they respect the dead, including how they see the people who once meant everything to them, and demanding money from your late wife's family. That's not just awkward, that's cold, that's insensitive, that's the kind of thing that leaves a permanent crack in the foundation of trust. So the writer's left wondering, is she wrong for pressing pause on forever? No, she's not. This isn't just some minor disagreement. This is a fundamental value clash. It's not about being jealous of the ex-wife or overstepping into his past. It's about integrity. And if your partner's morals send up red flags now, you better believe they'll come marching down the aisle with you if you ignore them. Let's call it what it is. This isn't just about a postponed wedding. This is about waking up before it's too late. So, is the writer the asshole? Hell no. She saw a side of her fiancé that didn't sit right, and she trusted her gut instead of shoving it down. That's not being dramatic, that's being smart. Am I the asshole for answering my Sill's annoying questions honestly every time she's told no? All right, you ever met someone who just doesn't get it? Like, no matter how clearly you say the word no, no matter how hard you try to put up boundaries, they treat no like it's the start of a negotiation. Not a complete sentence, just a speed bump on their way to getting what they want. That's Ellie. Let's set the scene. The writer is 28. She's got two older brothers, Paul, 30, and Ben, 33. Ben is married to Ellie, and Ellie is exhausting, not in a loud, chaotic way. No, it's the persistent kind. That insidious, boundary-blind kind of person who doesn't mean to be annoying, but just doesn't stop pushing. The kind that makes you want to scream into a pillow after every interaction. You say no to Ellie, she doesn't accept it. Instead, she turns into a cross between a guilt tripper and a 5-year-old stuck on why. For example, Ellie doesn't drive. Fair. That happens. But instead of just asking for a ride and moving on when declined, she drops this gem on the right to the rice rider. Who in this world refuses a shopping session with another woman? A person with a job, a schedule, a will to live? Paul says no to a house remodel invite because he's working that weekend. Ellie fires back. Can't you just take the weekend off? Why can't you prioritize helping your brother over work? It's like she's allergic to the concept of respecting someone's time. So what do Paul and the writer do? Like any rational adults, they sit down and try to talk to her. They even loop Ben in, Ellie's husband, because maybe, just maybe, hearing it from multiple people might click something in her brain. They tell her, no means no. You don't get to interrogate people when they say it. And what does Ellie say? Oh, I'm just naturally curious. Curious? Girl, this ain't a murder investigation. Chill. But nope, nothing changes. She keeps asking, keeps guilt tripping, keeps acting like boundaries are just suggestions. So the writer snaps, and not in an aggressive, petty way. No, she simply meets the energy Ellie puts out. You ask a dumb question, you get a blunt, unapologetic, real answer. Ellie asks the writer to babysit her kid for a weekend so she and Ben can have time to themselves. Writer says no. Ellie follows up with, what can be more important than spending time with your nephew? And the writer drops the truth like a sledgehammer. Honestly, my time, my sleep, my peace, a little quiet after a long-ass work week, all of that ranks higher than being your on-call babysitter. Boom. Then Ellie pulls another stunt, throws together a last-minute cabin getaway for the whole family. She announces it on Thursday for the very next day. Writer Paul and the parents all say no because, duh. People have lives and plans that didn't magically evaporate for Ellie's little retreat fantasy. But, again, Ellie won't let it go. What other plans can be so important that you can't reschedule for family time? And the writer, once again, doesn't sugarcoat. I'm going to my best friend's birthday party, and honestly, spending time with people whose company I actually enjoy ranks way higher than quality time with you. Brutal? Maybe. Honest? Absolutely. Deserved at this point? Hell yes. Now, here's where things get messier. Ben, Ellie's husband, suddenly gets mad. Not at Ellie. No. He gets mad at the writer and Paul for how they respond. He says they're intentionally humiliating his wife. Let's pause right there. What exactly is humiliating about telling the truth? See, here's the thing. If the truth is embarrassing, maybe the problem isn't the person saying it. It's the behavior being called out. If Ellie didn't want those answers, maybe she shouldn't keep pushing people with those passive-aggressive questions. Ryder and Paul hit Ben with the truth. We're not humiliating her. She's doing it to herself. If she stops with the questions, we'll stop with the honesty. Simple. It's not about being cruel. It's about matching the energy. And sometimes the only way to make someone finally get it is to stop protecting their feelings and let them sit in the reality of how annoying they are. So, am I the asshole? Let's be real. This isn't about being petty. This isn't about revenge. This is about enforcing a boundary with someone who steamrolls every no she hears. If people aren't willing to accept polite, calm rejections, they're going to get brutal honesty. And honestly, good. Sometimes the only way to deal with boundary stompers is to leave the door open, but make sure it slams hard enough behind you that they finally hear it. So no, Ryder, you're not the asshole. You're just playing nice with someone who never respected you in the first place.